Good afternoon, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Good, awesome. Well, thank you for attending this session. Today we're going to talk about Geopath's audience location measurement platform that we're building. Hugh and I have been working together now for a little over a year.
Yep.
After Hugh joined the City Labs team. And we're going to talk about how we do what we're doing, give a little overview of the platform, and then get some questions from you all. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, because there may be some folks in here that don't know who Geopath is, why we exist. We're a very unique organization. As you may have heard Kim Frank say on the main stage today, we've been around for 85 years, and our role as a trade organization puts us in a very unique situation to be able to be the group that all of the media owners, the agencies, the clients all get together to talk about and decide and create standards on how out-of-home is measured. And so that measurement can now serve as a currency for the buying and selling of out-of-home media. It's been developed with our members, so through committee making decisions on what is the best way to answer certain questions, how to deliver that product to our members. We also serve as an independent third party. It's very challenging when, and in the absence of measurement, which we can get into some of the currently non-measured media later on in the day if you're going to attend those sessions. But having a unified third-party measurement group that can create the information for the buying and selling is very important. The sellers can discount any information that the publisher may provide themselves, and the agencies also want to make sure that the agency's information is only really useful for that one agency. So selling information to another agency not be as trusted as a third party. So that's one of the other functions that we serve. Now our process of how we create audience measurement, because of all the information that's out there, we vet a lot of different data sources. And no single data source out there is perfect at measuring audience for the out-of-home ecosystem. And so what we do is we pull in data from various resources, speed data from connected cars, trip data from mobile devices, demographic data from surveys, from reported and stated behavior, and all that gets brought together, each contributing its strength to create an audience measurement solution that can drill down to the individual hour of day directionally on every single roadway for vehicular and pedestrian audiences to understand how many people and what are their audience profiles. Now, one of the main components of this is the traffic information coming from Streetlytics. And Streetlytics is a product created by City Labs, and I'm going to let Hugh talk about that.
Cool. So City Labs has been around since 2001. We are traditionally a travel demand modeling company. Our travel demand models, our platform is used in 2,500 cities around the world. These models are used to predict how people will move if you change a bit of the transit infrastructure. So that means what would happen if we dug a tunnel, we added a bike lane, we changed the structure or the layout of a parking lot. So we predict how people move. Streetlytics is moving from the prediction and going into measurement. And we created this specifically for Geopath. So Streetlytics from City Labs is available as a physical data set as well as an API. It is hourly volumes, speeds, and home locations for every single road in the US. It's also origin and destination pairs, so this is where people are coming from and where they're going to, as well as a turn-by-turn path, how they actually navigated from each one of those origins to the destinations. This is extremely large data. So we came up with the average path of every single vehicular trip as well as pedestrian trip in America.
So about 2 years ago, when we were evaluating the various proposals that were brought forth, trying to overhaul the audience measurement system, the Streetlytics product was shared with me a little demo on their website. I saw it, was looking at the data, and I ran out of my office and was giddy with what they were building, because when we thought that we were going to have to build a lot of this underlying traffic volume information, taking in the mobile location data, and these folks basically have taken their software that has been used by hundreds of municipalities all around the world spending, using the software to make decisions on billion-dollar infrastructure projects. That being able to then feed it with the location data from mobile devices, which has now reached a level of maturity to be able to feed that, being able to drill down to the audience information or the population and traffic information on every single roadway that we can then use to turn into audience information for out-of-home locations.
Yep. So how we create it, we're using the traditional throughput, so actual traffic counts that are gathered and created by DOTs, municipalities, cities, consultants. We have about 2 million roadways across the US. We have a team in Florida that actively gathers this throughout the year. As new ones are created, we add it to the system. Then we also use GPS as well as cellular location of actual trip patterns, so patterns of travel. Where do people live? Where do they go to work? Where do they go to school? Where do they go to shop? This gives us those OD patterns and allows us to understand general movements around the transit infrastructure. And finally, we also use what we've generated over the past 30 years is our travel demand model. So what is the prediction? How should people move around this infrastructure given the capacity of different modes of choice, given where people live, different points of interest? How should people move? And then finally, we combine all three of those lenses on the movement. So each one is a different idea of how, on a different lens on the same movement, we combine all of that into Streetlytics. So it gives us a total population movement. So it's not just a sample, it's actually looking at the entire 100% of the population moving along the roadways.
No, you'll hear a lot of folks out there with data resources talking about location data, and in its raw format, any single data set is usually going to have anywhere between 5, maybe 40% of the devices in that of that type. So, for example, like a carrier might have 40% of the market penetration. A mobile app might have 10% of users that have downloaded the app, and it's gathering information in the background. They're all a unique data set in that they're built to answer a particular question that isn't necessarily the question that we're trying to answer. And so what we need to do is take all those data sets together to then create paint a picture of the full population. I've used the analogy before. I'm not sure if anybody does Sudoku puzzles, but you're not given, obviously, all the numbers. You don't need all of the numbers to solve the puzzle, but with enough information, you can extrapolate and answer and fill in every single bit of information that's happening, not just for the observed devices that go into the solution, but at the end of the day, painting this population movement data set is really incredible with what Streetlytics is doing.
So this is the city of Atlanta, one of our offices, homes. We're actually based out of Sacramento.
They have a really cool office.
Yes, it's a very interesting
It's in
office.
like a WeWork space, but it's in a repurposed.
Ponce City Market, yeah.
It's an old Sears building.
Yeah, very, very, very cool. But so this is the city of Atlanta. This is actually Streetlytics data volumes. And what you can see here is this is every single roadway. So it's this is extrapolated across the US. This is every paved road in America. So residential roads as well as highways and everything in between.
And this is really important for us because our legacy approach was to go out and gather a DOT traffic count or actually send someone out in the field to go do a manual count. And that was good because that was the only information, the only way we could have gotten that data before. But then also the out-of-home market is growing, it's changing, inventory changes hand, things get built, things get taken down. We also wanted to make sure that we had the ability to answer questions immediately when someone says, "Hey, I'm putting up a billboard here. I need numbers for it." You hear that a question. I need my numbers. I need my ratings. Getting that lag time of when a piece of inventory is built and getting metrics in someone's hand is going to go completely away, because now we have the information on every single roadway. So if you have a proposed site, we can even tell you what the value of that location is going to be. So if you could take that for for financing or something, to be able to quantify, know exactly what the predictive audience is going to be for that potential location. So that's something that's been very exciting as well. And it's also opening the door for other out-of-home media channels like Fleet, which we'll have a session on later on this evening, because now we can understand how the audiences on those roadways interact with the vehicles carrying media moving around at the same time, which is really fun.
Yep. And feel free to stop by our booth and you can look up your home and see how many cars are actually passing in front of your home. So this is the next step of the data. So this is understanding the path of the consumer. So if you take one segment of road and ask the question, where are these people coming from and where are they going to? We actually used this recently with the City of Atlanta Regional Commission when part of our highway burnt down. And we answered the question, how important is this road to, one, the nation, so they can get US DOT funding to rebuild a bit of I-85, and then how important is it to the rest of the state? So can they get Georgia DOT funding to actually contribute to that? And then who specifically is hurt the most during their morning commute? So what neighborhoods were using this the most, and then where did they go? So what neighborhoods are they driving through to get around that one small segment? We have a blog about this up on our website as well. But this is highly important to understand where people go and where they're coming from, to understand behavior.
And this information is available at a very granular level. So this is run to be able to look at the audience profile, the traffic patterns for every single roadway directionally by hour of day, by day of week. We currently have seasonal data sets we are starting to receive from the City Labs product in June, monthly data to be able to start looking at historical patterns, to be able to look at post-campaign analysis. But you already see this little visual right here is actually from the beach, and you can see that this location has this sort of like seasonal bump in the middle. A lot of times, Kim mentioned on stage that a lot of out-of-home has been bought based upon sort of gut, and we know that these things are kind of true, but have never necessarily had the metrics to put behind our conversations. And having that information in a very data-savvy world allows this to go into the way that maybe brands are analyzing information. Going back to this map of the audience trip patterns, being able to understand the home locations of people that drove by a billboard allows you to close the loop and understand at the end of a campaign, when you do that post-campaign analysis, seeing how many impressions were generated from this zip code and this zip code and this zip code, and the brand or whatever your client is can look at that and say, well, you're right, I actually have seen more people visit my store, buy my products that live in that zip code because they have that information on their customer side. And so seeing that correlation is something that we're really excited about, to be able to go back to our clients and say, this is actually moving the needle, and this is how it fits into your other media buying strategies. Right, so here's the home location. I probably should just move forward instead of back. But this is an important piece also because the trip information that comes out of the Streetlytics product is incredibly important. And with the home location, we can tie that to a particular demographic. So we know that the demographics of those home locations, we know the context of those trips, whether it was a commuting trip, whether it was an education trip, other trips for like shopping. And based upon the demographics of those home locations and the time of day of when those trips occurring, we can be able to understand the demographic composition of those individuals. And the types of demographic data that we have today in our legacy system is things like age, gender, ethnicity, household income. Moving forward, we're getting into a world where we can talk about audience behavior information. So we can look at people that went to the beach, people that went to Starbucks, people that spent $150 or more in a year on camera equipment. It opens up the door to have very specific, meaningful conversations to people that may have not been able to look at out-of-home in a very specific fashion for the way that they talk about our audiences. So this is basically giving our members the opportunity to have a much more detailed, a richer conversation to help sell that story of this is how out-of-home can help you reach your customers or deliver to a particular objective. And not only at the local level, but at the national level. This is another huge improvement over what we've been able to do in the past, which is being able to understand how these devices are traveling across the entire country. You're able to get visitors, you're being able to get travelers coming in for business or for tourism. This map actually was from a downtown Chicago inventory where about 30% of the audience was actually coming from outside of the Chicago CBSA, and you see people coming in from Los Angeles, you see people coming in from Florida, all over the place. So putting all this information into a easy-to-use platform has been my life for the past 6 months, and I'm really excited to be able to put in everyone's hands the Geopath Insight Suite. Now, definitely come by our booth today to get literally a hands-on experience. We have a fun little touchscreen that you can to navigate in it. But within this software, we have all of our audited roadside inventory today. We're rolling in Placebased, we're rolling in Fleet soon, and it's an incredible way to look at all inventory across the entire country, regardless of market, all on the same map. And the approach to how we architected this, being able to look at audience first. So I want to look at Starbucks visitors. What inventory in the country is best at delivering for Starbucks audiences? So you can look at audience composition index, in-market impressions for a particular demographic. And that's all in the tool. And now when you click on a particular piece of inventory, you can get, of course, the attributes about that piece of inventory. You can get the sort of back of the card, what a lot of people would call like a photo sheet, but in the tool being able to see what the impressions, reach, frequency are. One of the other fun things in there about being able to see what audiences that particular location delivers well against. So maybe there's sort of a scenario where end of the month's coming up and I have some remnant inventory that hasn't been sold yet. Who should I go out to that would most likely find value in this location? So you can, in this case, I think it was shops for vehicles online. So it might be a good one to talk about for an auto dealer or something along those lines. Now also rolling in place-based media, this will be able to have all inventory all in the same location, which I know a lot of our members are very excited about. The goal is to make getting at the information that we're creating for our members easier to access. Now this is going to be available through the Geopath Insight Suite application. All of our members have access to this. But also the data is available via API, which is also going to be really important to be able to integrate perhaps into your own internal systems, be able to on internal proposal systems, accounting systems as well. Now in the near future, this summer we have a lot of fun features also rolling out. The idea of creating projects. So you can explore the inventory in the tool right now, but then you can start selecting inventory that maybe matches a particular criteria, saving it within a project as a package. You might have different packages over the year for a particular client. You might have a client that has a particular brand that's only running for an event, or you might have an annual contract with them. So having that information in there, being able to collaborate with other Geopath users within your organization, sharing that information is going to be really, really, really helpful. And then also some fun visualizations on, this is a lot of information that we're talking about. And so putting all that data into a chart, looking at the seasonal patterns, look at the hourly patterns, how to best present that information to your team, to yourself, or to the client to show this is what you bought on your campaign. So a lot of fun stuff coming out in the very near future. And I think with that, we'll kind of wrap up. We are going to have the in-person, if you want to come see the platform at our booth. But I think right now we're going to open it up for questions if there are any.
Yeah, you can go ahead and raise your hands if you have any questions.
Oh, hold on. So you say you can tell me. Am I live?
Yes, they are.
You mentioned you show some of the columns up there. They go to Starbucks or they're likely to buy a car. Mm-hmm. How do you? I might have missed a few minutes, but how do we tie this population of cell phones that we saw to likely to a connection with Starbucks and or a connection with likely to buy a car? And I have another question which is unrelated.
Absolutely. What we are building is not what you're describing. That would be a device level data set where you could go in and see, I saw these devices here and they also went here. What we are building is a full population representative data set of understanding the types of people at a particular location, so that that individual device data set isn't accessible to be able to pull out. And that part of this was done with intent because of concerns about creating a product around a data set that may not be allowed to be used for that purpose in the future. The GDPR happening in Europe right now is really restricting the way that, that data can be used to protect people's privacy. And so that information can be done. There are some fantastic partners out there that do have those data sets. We are exploring how to do that, but that's almost more of a case-by-case analysis. But yeah, that sort of attribution, device-level attribution, is something that I would love to do in the future.
So when I see a column up there that says this percent, 6% of the people go to Starbucks, that just means we took a sample in Skokie and we figure 6% of the people in Skokie go to Starbucks?
Right, so based upon the home location of the trips that we have observed, those households have been to Starbucks in the past 30 days. And so we aggregate that up at the board level. So it's always in an aggregated, anonymous fashion. So you wouldn't be able to say, okay, so of those people that just drove by the board, what else did they just do? That's not this.
No more? Cool. Yeah.
Come on.
Hi, Dylan.
Hi.
Deanna Fountas from Talmar. Since in the past, I think you know, I had done some consulting in the digital place-based arena, let me ask you what you're doing in terms of digital place-based that would include out-of-home media, but they're not media that are outdoors, whether it's shopping malls, airports, et cetera.
Yeah,
I'm trying to understand, and I know you have another session coming up, but if you could maybe
Sure.
briefly
So
talk
just
about it here.
a brief, yeah. So there are basically three major categories of media that we are measuring. The first one is the roadside inventory. Think of like the bulletin, street furniture. You're talking about people that are moving, traveling. We're engaging with them as they are on the way to a destination. What Anna's mentioning is this idea of place-based media. When someone has gotten to their destination, how do we quantify who those audiences are? Now, there's a couple of things that we've been able to leverage, and we're currently in the middle of a pilot system right now to build that out. But the same concept, we're talking about understanding the persons inside the venue that are passing by that signage inside the venue to then roll up to an audience. But it'll all be available in the same platform. We're actually using the Geopath Insight platform as a mechanism to deliver some of that audience information in the prototype form to the pilot participants. And it's been very exciting because the place-based world is growing incredibly rapidly as technology is getting less and less expensive. Everything's becoming connected to the IoT, the Internet of Things, and so having, I guess, the barrier to entry to developing a digital network is less than it's ever been. So those are going to be expanding quite a bit. So I think we're a really good time to be able to bring more media types into what Geopath measures, and that's place-based, roadside, and then also fleet, which essentially uses the same sort of data set, the Streetlytics data set for the traffic and speed data, but tying that to a moving vehicle. So we can take that GPS data or that planned route of a vehicle and aggregate audience for planning purposes, or take GPS data from a campaign that ran and actually roll that up into what was delivered for that bus that was driving around the marketplace, or that mobile billboard, or the wrapped vehicle. It's a lot of stuff coming out. The fleet will be integrated this summer. Place-based will probably be a little bit later this year, probably around September. That's our current goal.